when people can't pay their bills, when their gambling takes over. I mean, anything that you look at, you have to clip the top chunk of it off to be able to deal with people that are, you know, addicted to it and try to compensate them because, you know, we got to scrape off this much because we know we're going to have people that are going to get destroyed by this, so we need to have some money over here. Okay, I mean, that should tell you something. Because we're being watched by the courts, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, that's the reality of it. Every time we get sued as a state for education, we lose. We just lost none of them. And these are all points that he brought up specifically in there, but the legislature is still charged with the responsibility of putting together what that looks like, you know? And so that's why we're trying to navigate through this thing and figure out what's just going to be, what we can do and what we shouldn't do, and are there things that we need to pump the brakes on, or the things that we need to hit fourth gear and punch it on, and what that looks like, and how can we afford it, and what does that look like for the districts, and what extra responsibilities are we going to lay on our administration and our teachers, you know? And I hear often when I go to these things and talk to people about education, you know, what about the parents? Where do the parents play and involved in this? And do they see the need to take more responsibility? And the reality of it is that a lot of times parents have taken the attitude that school is the parent. And they just take them there and they say, hey, you keep them alive until I come pick them up and feed them and discuss their mental issues and educate them and do all these things, and I'll be back to get them later. And it's not helping. It's not a good way to educate kids. But we still have to navigate through this because kids are still needing to get an education. And what does that look like? And so that was what SF81 is. Another part of this I just picked up even since my last meeting. So what it tells you is that this SF81 is still kind of in flux because the Wyoming Department of Education is still setting up rules right now. So my encouragement to all districts is don't get in a hurry to be making decisions unless you really have to. And if you do, then get a hold of the Wyoming Department of Education and find out where they're headed with some of this stuff. Because they just said they're waiting to hear now on the final rules from the WDE, but the co-curricular activities might be classified in the silo. So and that would be, for example, speech, debate, FFA, all that could be in there, which would add more dollars into that. That would help fund some of those things, that particularly in activities that might be different. So they're working through, the Wyoming Department of Education is working through the rules right now. So we'll see how that kind of shakes out, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see how that looks. So with that, we can go into interim topics, a couple specific interim topics, and then we'll throw it open for questions. Tom Ling had asked me to look into and to try to get something going on fraud. And you know, a lot of these folks like SafeLock and people being able to get access to the title to your property or your home and to be able to leverage it or tie it up. Very real issue. And we're seeing a lot more of this starting to happen. It's actually happening. I was in Sundance 2 nights ago and I talked a little bit about this, and my sheriff is in the back of the room going, shaking his head, yes, this is happening. So we've got Joel Guggenmoss, and we've got a really good committee now. We're going to do a deep dive into what it looks like, and I know I've sent Tom some information on that, and hopefully he's working with Joel on getting some legislation formulated where we can provide protection coverage for people to protect your property so that somebody can't come in and do something that you know nothing about, but you find out when you go and try to find your title or to borrow some money or whatever, and somebody else has beat you to it. And so, or there's an eviction notice coming because somebody has leveraged your home and spent all the money and not made the payments. And so it's unbelievable. You go back to the technology of what can be done to somebody right now, and the amount of access to information that's out there is just crazy. It really is. Some other things, we'll talk to you guys a little bit about the state lands. And that is from the standpoint of what are we doing with our state lands? What does it look like for access? We did not pass that corner crossing bill. created a lot of heartache for folks in the effort to try to, TRW brought that bill to look at providing a little more access to state lands. There's a move afoot to take our state lands and treat them like the Bureau of Land Management lands, federal lands, and that's not a good deal because in there you can build fires and you can camp and do all those kinds of things which you currently cannot do on state lands. And so I know a lot of the folks, sportsmen, the hook and bullet folks, really would like to see that opened up and made more liberal than that. The implications are far-reaching. Isolated pieces of property, you may have or may not have been listening to some of what's going on over here at KC. We had an isolated section of state lands up there that was some folks hired a helicopter and flew in, landed, shot some elk. The landowner that completely surrounded that and used that as his property, he got out across for some shooting or whatever, and up until that point, the only way you could have ever gotten in there without asking him would be to trespass, and so he runs across a 6-point bull elk skull, picks it up, and commences to leaving with it, because, I mean, his first thought is, you had to trespass to get to here. And so then the hunters were there, camped on that piece of ground, and they caught him, and now he's going to court, facing a misdemeanor. And so this thing's bubbling and brewing, and we're gonna see more and more things come with that. So that's a major issue that we're gonna be looking at, but that's gonna be some stuff that we're studying. Let's see here. Oh, go down through some of the different committees, give you some general ideas. Some of the stuff that's probably gonna be more. We talked a little bit about fraud protection. We're going to do some election review work on our elections. Public Service Commission, we're going to be talking a little bit about electricity and some of the things that are going on. I know one thing that you guys are going to be dealing with down here, and I've been asked, is the proposed rate increase from the energy on that. I've had several conversations with some folks that are in the know on that, or that got quite a bit of information. You're dealing with a company that is an actual, it has owners and it requires a profit. And it's an owner, what is it called? An investment-owned utility, investor-owned utility. And so I asked them about that and how in the world you could just come and say, hey, guess what, how about a 32% increase? Anybody up for that? Well, why would you do that? Well, we haven't done it to you in 14 years. Why are you worried? I mean, well, that just tells me you've been overcharging us for 14 years. You just made enough off of us that you're not going to come and try to catch up. But the reality of it is there are so many steps that have got to be gone through to have that happen. And actually, the communities, I've learned, have a lot to say about what they do because they have contracts with these folks. And the very, very real potential that you've got another certificated area that you could potentially look at. So there are so many steps in this that are going to have to take place. You're going to have, I've got where did that, here. There's a name of an outfit. You got to go through the PSC and then you've got to go through another one, Advocate something. And that guy told me, he said they're going to hash and slash and chop that thing up. And he said by the time they get done trying to get 32%, he said it's probably going to be half or less than that, who knows. But he said that the people that are the users have a tremendous amount to say about whether or not that comes to fruition or not. And so I would encourage all of you and them to stay engaged and involved in the process and make sure that you're listening to what's happening and make your voices known. Because these guys have got investors, they've got people that have invested in these companies and they want to see a profit. Granted, but like that gentleman told me, he says, to create a kilowatt was, 14 years ago was, I can tell you, hang on, I've actually got those numbers for the commissioners and you folks that are leadership here in the area that are going to be dealing with it specifically. I can actually give you some of these figures and you can kind of tell me if this is true or not, but give me 1 minute here and I'll find it, I promise. Okay, yeah, it's an investor-owned utility, Black Hills Energy is who you're dealing with, and they're looking for about a 10.2 rate of return. And so the thing he said, years ago, it's called the Office of Consumer Advocacy. He said, is also going to be somebody that is going to weigh in on this before anything happens. And you'll have to see that happen. He said, but to give me an idea, when he was sharing this with me, he said, right now it's about $3,000 for a kilowatt, right now. He said, 14 years ago it was $800 a kilowatt. He said, so he said, that's why. He said, just the reality of business. He said, they're having to try to make accommodations for what it's costing to create that energy that's just expensive. And, and he said, and it can have some major implications to companies that have relied or contracted more expensive power sources. He said, if they're relying a lot on wind and solar, intermittent sources, he said that can have a great deal to do with what their future contracts are, their contracts are up or whatever. He didn't know and he wasn't going to share, but he said there are a lot of moving parts in this rate increase proposal. And he said there's quite a bit of time before that thing actually comes to fruition. He said, but whatever you do, don't wait. He said, be proactive, be on the front end of it and asking questions and finding out why and what the impacts are. And he said, really, his encouragement to me to tell you guys was always weigh your options and look at what other things you can do as communities, mainly Upton and Newcastle, and as users, and what other options you have out there as far as being able to maybe look at some other sources to provide your energy needs. Okay, we can go over a little bit of that, but that's pretty much it what he said on that. If you have some questions on that, if I can help in any way to try to get you some answers or get you in touch with people that would be able to maybe help bring some clarity to that and give you some ideas, I'm glad to do that. Tribal relations, that's not a big deal really up here. Okay, rural health transformation. All of you knew about the $1 billion that was coming supposedly per state for rural health transformation. Okay, Wyoming put together a plan and submitted it. We were told that the plan was accepted. And then we just got word the other day that it's not accepted. So here's what they've come back with. What we had was a plan that would have spent a portion of that money that was coming in, but because we couldn't just spend it all, and just blow it into a small state like Wyoming, it just evaporates. We wanted to come up with a plan that actually was getting it into for like EMS and all these different things, but that there was a fund that was being held in there and that we would be spending off that fund years down, but it would be completely depleted, but it wasn't just a huge injection of money that just suddenly went away. Well, when we submitted our plan, several other states said, that's a good idea, and we would like to do that as well. We don't want to just blow it all and be done with it. We want to actually meter it out and actually have long-term usefulness of it that will actually make a real difference. Well, now they've come back and they've said no. The current word that I got, and they're in negotiations with it right now, so this is in flux. Once again, we're going to have to continue this conversation and keep you guys in the loop. But they want 85% of that money to be spent on, I hope you're sitting down, which all but one of you are, consultants and technology. 15% they want to go to rural health. Which is just blows me away. So our State Department of Health is working on it, Mr. Johansson, and a couple other folks are involved in it. I've got my Labor Health Committee, we've got some legislators that are assigned to be a part of this discussion, but they're back there talking about it right now. And so that's the word that's come back, is that they want 85% of that $1 billion to go to consultants and IT or technology. 15% to actually doing the work that we really would love to have seen done for rural health and rural communities, and actually supporting and increasing and enhancing and repairing a lot of the issues that we have and helping our rural health structure to be able to have what it needs to move ahead. Well, 15% is right now. So we'll see how that plays out, because there's a lot of states that are in our same position that are wanting to do a more methodical, longer view approach to spending those monies wisely, instead of just blowing them on stuff that's really, at this point, I can't find the necessity. I mean, some consulting, maybe get in there and figure out what's going to be the best way if necessary, but 85% of $1 billion, it looks like you might want to open a consulting firm. because that could be a heck of a deal there. But anyway, I mean, I was talking with one of the hospitals up there about that, hey, we're looking for an HVAC system. We want to be able to come into some compliance and do some long-term, investments in our facility, and that looked like that was going to happen, and it would be a very real opportunity, and not only immediately, but ongoing. Well, the last word we got is that is not what they were thinking, and they were thinking consultants, technology, and 15% of what really matters. So we're going to see how that plays out, but we are working on that. Some of that was going to be some maternity care issues and stuff that was going to be involved in that, but we're still going to be studying that. I mean, here's your labor health committee. Their top priorities is workers' compensation and then rural health is what's going to be the interim topics. The maternity care issues are going to be another priority. Healthcare provider shortage, accessibility to healthcare. Behavioral health problems, which goes back to what we were talking about in education and mental health. And then some things that they're talking about in some new treatments and cancer treatments. And some of these things of being able to make sure that we can allow people the opportunities for some choices in that are currently maybe not available. So wanting to provide those opportunities there. Let's see, game and fish budget. Because we gave raises to the state employees was voted, the game and fish came back and said, because now you've helped out the state employees with a pay increase, our employees want a pay increase, which is going to amount to $6 million, and how are we going to do that? So, because they're not on the budget, they're not on the general fund budget, they're a separate entity on themselves. So now TRW is going to be looking at what game and fish is going to want to do, because it's just like anything, when you had a ball, you squeezed it, well, you thought you had it, well, it just squirted out over here and over here. So now we've created a situation where we have another agency that has employees that are wanting to be treated the same way that the state employees are, and that's going to mean a $6 million increase to do what we just helped everybody clamoring for with the increase in state dollars. And so what's that going to look like? Is that going to be another increase in license costs? Who knows? I don't know. But that will be a topic of discussion through the course of this next summer. So just something to consider on that. And if you have some ideas on how the game and fish can come up with $6 million extra to keep their employees happy, I will give you a number, or you can tell me, and I can pass that information on to you. Another thing doing too, ladies and gentlemen, and I think it's important to all of us here, because this is going to quickly become a statewide issue, is the topic of gaming. As of today, the gaming industry in Wyoming is a $2 billion industry, and it is growing exponentially. We've got some merging now happening between different gaming groups. You had 307 horse racing, you had Thunder Plains, you had Wyoming Downs, all this different stuff. Well, now you're starting to see a pretty active interest and involvement in large organized gaming. With the fact that we're building a track at Cheyenne, I think it was Thunder Plains. That was another one that was coming online, some individuals. Well, we just heard the other day that Bally's now has purchased the track, or the horse racing portion of it. Not the game, not the machines, but Bally's is now a major investor in that particular deal there. So and Bally's is huge. I mean, that's big time. Bally's this is not small. So, and I said this openly, and I will tell you again, and I hope you guys know this, I hate gambling.
While the rest of the country watches brackets fall apart, Wyoming's finances are being managed without guesswork, and that discipline is delivering championship-caliber results. State Treasurer Curt Meier has helped grow state investments into Wyoming's top revenue source. When it comes to the state's finances, it is a good idea to keep the ball in Curt's hands. Re-elect Curt Meier and set the stage for a finer 4 years for Wyoming.
This is not small. So, and I said this openly, and I will tell you again, and I hope you guys know this, I hate gambling. That's just me. I hate what it does. I hate the fact that if we don't get this under control, it's becoming kind of a revenue source that once it starts feeding something, we're going to want to grow it. Because invariably, when you find something that's really generating a ton of revenue, everybody loves something that generates a ton of revenue. And we got moved to put, nearly 8,500 machines in Wyoming. And to give you a context, Virginia has a cap on their number of machines that they have in the state. It's 5,000. Do you know how many millions of people live around Virginia and in Virginia? And they're wanting 8,500 machines in Wyoming. And Virginia is capped at 5,000. So the argument that we're hearing is that, well, Colorado and Utah and Nebraska and South Dakota, they're all going to come in for these. We have to have ample numbers of machines to be able to take all of this massive amount of out-of-state traffic in here, because we are close to the Front Range. That's where the big gaming is going on down there. Cheyenne, down there, they're coming up, from the Front Range to gamble. And so they're looking at this as a major cash cow. But there are so many other things that go on with this, ladies and gentlemen. When you start really digging into it, I know you can look at some audiences when I say that, they're just like, you're an idiot, you're just not taking advantage of something, you're looking at a gift horse in the mouth. But when you start digging into it and you start looking at what it actually costs the state in extra cops, law enforcement, resources to communities, to education, to healthcare, to family services, all these different things, when people can't pay their bills, when their gambling takes over. Anything that you look at, that you have to clip the top chunk of it off to be able to deal with people that are, addicted to it, and try to compensate them, because, we got to scrape off this much because we know we're going to have people that are going to get destroyed by this, so we need to have some money over here. Okay, that should tell you something. And we were told that the lotto, the gaming, that the Wild Lotto was going to be a major dollar generator for education. That's what I was told it was sold as. That was going to help fund education. Well, to this day, that has never put a dime into education. I checked those figures here, and not a dime has made it to education. It's all for winnings and administration. Not a dime has made it to education, and that's how it was sold. So, we're trying to get our hands around it. We're trying to put some caps on it. When you talk about caps, people's hair bursts into flames. You're stopping me from being able to make money. You're cutting the state's nose off to spite its face, and all these different things. But it is here, and I've got legislators that are upset with me, because I'm even putting together a task force to deal with it. A committee to look at legislation. But I think hiding in the sand and sticking your head and thinking this is gonna go away, it isn't. So we've got to deal with it. We've got to figure out what we can do to try to at least get our arms around it and try to manage it. I don't want to see it expand. I want to see it at least held and try to figure out what to do with it. But right now it is full speed ahead. It is generating more money than agriculture in the state of Wyoming.
Really?
$2 billion in gambling. What did I just hear the other day? Agriculture economy is $1.8 billion, something like that we generate in ag. Gambling is moving ahead of agriculture in gross dollars generated. So, and it all started with historic horse racing. And I just loved the historic horse racing. I would encourage any of you, if you guys ever get a chance, if you don't already, I got a chance to walk into one down there in Cheyenne. We were at a meeting, and we said, a couple of us leaderships, I asked him, I said, you ever been in one? He said, no, I've never been in there. So we go in there, and we're looking, and it's just, it's Vegas. Full on Vegas. And these people, and here's the thing, most people in there shouldn't really be in there. Because oxygen bottles and old folks are sitting right there, and they're just doing this, and they're just pumping around. And I'm looking at this, and I'm talking to this one guy, he said, hey, you got any questions? What do you want to know about this? I'm like, I want to know how this all works, and how in the world are you guys able? I thought this was historic horse racing that these guys were betting on. And he says, they are. He says, come here, I'll show you. And he says, look up right up there. And at the top of this huge machine is this digital horse race you're watching. And he said, and all this, the numbers on this machine, and I'm looking at the machine, and here's this scantily clad woman that is standing there about ready to fall out of her shirt, and she's what I'm like, so this is horse racing, and yeah, up here, and so I'm watching this, and he said, and the odds and all this, and he said, if you take all the time And look at it, he said, that's an actual race that we're running. That was a piece of history, a historic horse race. And he said, and if you know the odds and you want to do all the work and do all that, he said, you can bet on that. That's your odds. He said, that's the horse racing. He said, I said, but what is this? And he said, it's a loophole. He said, we have found a loophole in your state law that allows us that as long as we're doing that, we can do this. And he said, what can I tell you? He said, you guys left us a loophole. It's just like, so anyway, it's here, it's coming, it wants to move to every one of your communities and come and make you a lot of money. And just take care of all of your problems and just fix up all of your revenue shortfalls with just let us do that. So anyway, another thing, education, being it is a front burner issue and topic and stuff like that, it always really should be. We're going to be looking at the basket of goods. Education committee is going to be going back through and evaluating the basket of goods, some of the things that need to be in there, talking with districts and finding out some things that we need to maybe change, and also dig into how many of our, let's see, what is, I made some notes here, God, I can't even read it. Remedial classes. We've got a lot of data now that is saying a lot of our kids, actually a full third was the information I got from the Wyoming Department of Education, now are requiring remedial classes when they're entering the Institutes of Higher Learning, specifically the University of Wyoming is where that information came from. And so we're going to be looking at why that is and what that looks like and the percentages and things like that, because that is a massive additional cost to these kids as they go to school. To have to go, LCCC is got quite a little cottage industry providing remedial classes for kids that are trying to go to the University of Wyoming. And so why are they not ready to do those classes when they get there? And so we're looking at that. Dual concurrent enrollment programs, we're going to be looking at that, which we added some money. Virtual education, we're going to be looking at that. Community study virtual education programs in the state, including how they are funded, how students are counted within the district's average data membership, and how students are reported. Assessment and accountability systems is another priority. Number 3, we're going to do a state administrative review looking at that, and artificial intelligence in the schools, and what AI is doing for education, and what it's not doing. Because technology, I've had a teacher north of here told me, he said, I don't grade homework anymore. I'm like, what? He said, they cheat. He said, there's no point. He said, I'll give them an assignment. He said, they'll take it home, they'll give it to Google. Google will spit out the answer and they hand it in to me. He said, so how do I grade that? He said, so I don't give homework anymore. He said, because they have access to all the information. And he said, so we're trying to be able to find programs that can actually detect information that is not, something that's been brought off the internet or whatever. And he said it has become very challenging to try to get these kids to really, dig in and get it. And we were talking about a bill, Senate file number 59, caused quite a bit of a stir on the floor, of making sure that we go back and have the remedial classes and these kids get this foundational part of it. And I had given some of that information that I got from the Wyoming Department of Education when we were working on that piece of legislation. I had a legislator come out that's actually a college professor, come out and told me, he says, Chip, he says, you're right. He said, I hate to say it. He said, our kids are struggling to comprehend. He said, comprehension right now is a real struggle. He's a college teacher that I rub shoulders with him as a legislator. And he said, it's a very real problem. And he said, I've seen it continually increase. He said, we have to deal with it. He said, we can't just assume that that's going to go away. He said, reading comprehension and the ability to be able to comprehend and understand situations and things like that in education are very real. And then also we'll be looking at school discipline. That committee will be. And some of the issues that districts struggle with and face if they are with discipline issues. Let's see. We're going to be on revenue. Some of the questions and some of the topics is property tax reform. That is Senator McEwen and Representative Locke. Their top priority is going to be doing some more discussion, looking at some property tax reform and what it would take to replace that. whatever avenues there are there available to be able to bring relief, and yet be able to continue to fund. So they're going to be taking that up. Electricity taxation is another issue they're going to be looking at. This topic will include consideration of the imposition of a tax on production of electricity that leaves the state. In that one conversation I had there, we'll discuss and include a review of the work of the Electricity Tax Subcommittee for 2024, and look at, discuss, may also include related topics, including severance tax on wind energy facilities and distribution of sales tax on large electrical loads. You know, you're hearing a lot of stuff about data centers and what data centers are going to do, and I've had some real concerns from people saying that these data centers are taking all this electricity and it's making it so that we can't provide electricity for our ratepayers and for our individuals. But the truth is, these data centers are coming in, they're building their own electrical generation facilities. So, ladies and gentlemen, Tallgrass, they've got a monstrously big data center down there, and they are coming from behind the meter. They are generating their own power. They are burning our natural gas to generate power to supply the electrical needs of them, so as not to draw down on the city of Cheyenne and hopefully not overload that. And so we're actually seeing situations where they have excess power now, and they're wanting to help put that into the system. And so it's kind of an interesting dynamic, and not everybody is thrilled with the idea of data centers. And I do know this, and I'm just trying to learn as much as I can about them and try not to just be club no, but that is an actual finished product that Wyoming is able to sell. They're utilizing something that we normally export through a pipeline to other states, and they utilize it, and they do their business, and they generate their industries and their jobs with them. Now, Wyoming, they have found that we are a very ideal location for data centers because of the fact that our altitude is high and we have a dry climate, which is very conducive to computers, and we're cold. And they create a lot of heat, and it's a colder climate up here, so they can run far more efficiently, cooler, longer in the season than they can in other locations. And we have space and we have the energy. Wyoming has something they have to have. And it's not wind and solar, ladies and gentlemen. Data centers do not like intermittent power. There's nothing your computer loves more than up and down, not so much. They get kind of grumpy. What they need is consistent, reliable baseload power, and Wyoming can produce that in massive amounts. Yes, ma'am?
What about the extreme use of water that we hear about?
That is a discussion point, and thank you for bringing that up. I talked to those guys down there. I went to a meeting there in Laramie when they had a bunch of these bigger groups coming in and talking about this. The technology now is loop technology. So they load the system and they don't continue to draw water. The mayor of Cheyenne told me, and I haven't confirmed this, but he said that largest data center there, I believe he said, is using 1% of what the city of Cheyenne is using, is what it will use when they complete it, because they will charge the system and it will loop. It will use its water and will stay inside of a loop. It will not be constantly pulling water and you're overusing it and wasting that water. So they're wanting, the technology is now advancing so quickly that they can cool these systems with a closed loop system like a refrigeration system, is what they were telling me. So they're working supposedly to try to control that use of water, because water use in Wyoming. Okay, Walter. Every time I see you jump up, it makes me
go
think
ahead.
I'm going to bother you.
My job's to follow.
So that is a very real concern, and that is one of my issues, is that if we can't find a way to do it without just utilizing all of our water. I mean, water's, for any of you, I've said this, for any of you guys in here that have a girl in your house, water's important. And the lack of it is even more important. And so we don't want to waste water now. Yes, ma'am?
What about job creation? How many jobs is this going to create in these data centers?
You know, and I'm going to have to dig into that, because that's the second time I've been asked that. At the initial creation of that building, thousands of jobs. I mean, it's incredible the amount of, career technical jobs, electricians, builders, all that to build it. As far as ongoing actual jobs on the ground, continual on, I've heard some of those data centers can bring as many as 400 or 500 jobs, depending on what they're doing, but I don't know that, so.
Next question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have the tech schools to be able to produce fit, they're qualified. Do we have the tech schools in our state at this time? If not, are we gonna have plans to create some tech schools?
We are actually adding more money. We added it in this budget for the University of Wyoming for career technical education, just to try to meet and address this growing need for technical training. We added about $6 million, I believe, or 6 or 9, I have to go back and double check that, but it's for the College of Education, for specifically to develop career technical education teachers to be able to help our schools, because we've got a major shortage in people in that field. Currently, 60% of the jobs available in Wyoming are career technical education jobs. And like biotech, they're exploding right now. I mean, as far as what they're doing, as far as number of students that are coming in there and are taking advantage of that type of jobs, it's huge. So yes, the focus is on, fast tracking these kids. If that's a field that they want to go in, we are definitely working very diligently in education-wise, institutes of higher learning, and even siloing and getting, career technical education dollars on the ground in the local districts, and adding to that is critical to the long-term health of the state, because that's where our jobs are. Now, it was interesting. I was talking to one of the folks there that have got a data center or were working on one, and he said, here's something nobody thinks about. He said, pest management. I'm like, what? And he said, bugs. I'm thinking bugs in a computer, and I said, no, real bugs in a computer. He said, you can't have little tiny gnats or flies or anything inside of those very intricate systems without them building a little nest in there or something like that and screwing everything up. He said, so we're in Cheyenne trying to develop businesses that are going to come and help us make sure that our buildings are constantly clean and free from pests and flying and otherwise. And all those things, he said, are starting to be real demands down there that are growing jobs.
I don't think the county commissioner's intent is to close down the hospital. I'm
Well, they
dead
wouldn't
certain.
say that they did it. They would say the Department of Audit and the
Audit did it.
hospital through its
Right.
its failures, that the hospital and the Department of Audit did it, and they were just
Right.
the instrument, which is
Mhm.
true, but they could be an instrument of
To
defiance.
help save it. Right. They need to be the instrument to help save it.
There's a reason that state law says the county commission shall do, and we'll end on this, okay? The law says the county commission shall take this measure, not to force the county commission to take this step, but to make it clear that only the county commission can take this step. The reason the law is written with the county commission shall is so that the state does not shut down a hospital, a water district, a something else.
We're in Cheyenne trying to develop businesses that are going to come and help us make sure that our buildings are constantly clean and free from pests and flying and otherwise. And all those things, he said, are starting to be real demands down there that are growing jobs that you would never think of that would be involved in that kind of a development of that. But I had a conversation with one of the energy companies down there, and whether or not this ever comes to fruition or not, it's anybody's guess. But she told me point blank, she says there's proposals for 43 data centers in Wyoming. And they said that it's going to be an incredible thing for the state. He said, because she said, you guys have what we need, and that's power. She said, that's why they're coming here. You have the ability to generate power. And another big part of it is the Trump administration currently is doing everything they possibly can to try to lower those regulation hurdles that we've had to be able to help us to have access to our resource and help us develop it. I love the idea that we're actually getting a finished product. I would rather, us get not get a percentage of it as it leaves the state, but we're actually getting bad benefit here because we're actually retailing our gas now in Wyoming, and so I'm getting some extra value add too. So another question here, Dan.
She asked my first one. My second one was you brought up after that about all the construction stuff. Most of them's going to be coming up out of Colorado, aren't they?
A lot more, yes.
And that money's not going to stay in Wyoming, it's going to go back to Colorado.
And the reality of it is we don't have enough human beings to do it. So we have where they want to locate, as far as the ability to have the workforce to be able to handle that, we simply don't have enough belly buttons to be able to do it. But the thing is that we are quickly working to take advantage of that. I mean, there is incredible job opportunity in Wyoming. There really is. And with the energy and the current administration, like them or not, they are America first, and there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in Wyoming. And Wyoming specifically, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, you know, they talk about Wyoming as closed for business. It's not. I mean, we have what they want, and they're coming for it. I was talking to a gentleman up there that's right on top of Pine Ridge. He just put in a massive frac sand facility up on top of that hill. And I asked him, I said, you know, go and talk about the Wyoming Business Council, stuff like that. And I said, have you ever dealt with the Wyoming Business Council, or what brought you here? He said, you have what I needed. He said, Wyoming is the most business-friendly state, he said, I've ever worked in. He said, the only thing I will fault you guys for, he says, your Department of Transportation, he said, specifically, he said, your commercial highway, and you know, as far as the state highway department, stuff like that, with the scales and weights and all that. He said, they're pretty salty to work with. He said, I haven't had a lot of success there. He said, but I will go out of my way to work in Wyoming. He said, this is the most business-friendly, accommodating state, he said, I've ever been in. And he said, and I have businesses in multiple states all around the U.S. I said, have you ever applied for any money or anything like that? He said, why? He said, why would I? He said, this thing makes money. He said, I don't need to. He said, you have what I need. I'm coming for what you have. He said, a great business climate. And he said, you have the resources here to be able to use. And he's building frac sand and hauling it down to Wright. You know, so there's other impacts with that. You know, what about our roads? How is that going to affect, you know, our roads? Heavy loads traveling great distances over our asphalt. And, but, you know, these guys are all looking at this of how we're willing to help. We're willing to do what we need to do, because making sure that we can get our product where it needs to be is in our best interest. And so there's a real, to me, when they're talking to people like that, there's a real attitude of let's work together to have everybody be successful in this. And I love that. And it just tells me that Wyoming is absolutely open for business, and people want to come here because it's a good place to do business. And we need to continue to encourage that. We have something nobody else can offer. You know, do y'all realize that the eastern edge of Wyoming, the whole state line, is the separation between the eastern and western grid? The whole United States of America? The state line between South Dakota and Wyoming is the line. We are setting in the most ideal location we could possibly be to push power both directions. Right here. I mean, opportunity that we can't even fathom is sitting here waiting to be developed in Wyoming. And it's coming. I mean, people need you're standing under it. It's going to get dark here pretty quick, and I don't see a breath of wind here in Newcastle, Wyoming right now, which is kind of unusual probably. But your lights and your fans will still be running, and you know what that is? That's cold. And that's awesome. Clean, beautiful, low sulfur, affordable baseline.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of you in here go into some room and flip a switch on and don't expect the light to come on? You know? Well, there's places that are not sure. You know? I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, we need to recognize the value of what Wyoming has in development. And to our security, our ability to provide that is not only security for this nation, but it's national security, but it's also world security for the people that we support and our allies. And so, any other questions? We'll look at this again, cut off a little everything. Public access to court records, we talked a little bit about that. Oh, and this is it is kind of a hot button issue. We talked about it on the floor down there. I'm glad to have that conversation. Wyoming Business Council. What's going to happen with it? Well, what we did was we ultimately ended up splitting the responsibilities of looking at the Wyoming Business Council and trying to take a deep dive into what's working, what isn't working, how to change it, transform it, make it more effective, to try to make it something that's going to be more good for the dollars that it has. The Minerals Committee, which is Minerals and Business Development, took the structure part of the Wyoming Business Council. They're going to look at all the different departments. They're going to look at what is working and the numbers and everything, and see what we can do to improve that system there. And the appropriations committee took the half of the financing department and tried to look at, how we're spending those dollars, what are the resources that we're needing to be able to continue to fund it. If they work together, those two committees are going to jointly work on reevaluating the Wyoming Business Council and see if we can hopefully not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but definitely, and it's the consensus view of almost everybody down there, is it needs reevaluation. It needs to be looked at and actually done something with. Now, I did try something, and we're still going to continue to work on this, is I tried to pull the $54.9 million that was in the BRC, which stands for Business Ready Communities Fund, in the Business Council, and move it over into consensus grants, which used to be something that was done up until 2016 in the state of Wyoming. And I did a bunch of research on this and talked to a lot of the stakeholders, and they said that was one of the most effective systems that they found. And for any of you that may know or might not know, Beth Blackwell, she is awesome. And Beth and I worked a ton
She is
together.
our loan and grant writer for
Yes,
the
she's
city.
working for you guys here right
Yes.
now, and she's
She's amazing.
She helped me a ton, and she was a huge advocate for this. She put information together for me, worked on. She said the consensus grants were some of the best, most well-spent dollars that she'd ever got an opportunity to work with when she was working with the slip board. And so what I did was we used it through the Madden formula, the old formula that they used on it, and laid that $54.9 million and would have put it into the consensus grant dollars, which puts it out to every county, not just those that compete against each other for the BRC money, but actually every county would benefit and have opportunity with those dollars. What I learned is a lot of the bigger towns that have better dollars, more folks that are going to be advocating and hiring engineers and all this stuff are in maintenance mode. When you look at smaller communities, most of them are in panic mode. They're trying to figure where I'm going to come up with money, how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to continue to build infrastructure and keep this place viable and active. Well, that's when Beth and I were talking. She says this is money that these communities can actually get their hands on when they work together with a common focus, come up with a plan, they said, and then do it. But the big issue that we talked a little bit about, and something I brought up to her, is it can go away. So sometimes you can see situations where communities are not less than willing to work together to come up with a plan, a long-term plan, because we might give it to you guys, and what happens if it goes away next year? So we've just given our position up, and we're not going to get this done because it may or may not be there. So what we're doing is we're working to figure out a long-term funding solution for that. No different than direct distribution, which was House Bill, which was, I believe it was 107. We actually codified the direct distribution to all communities into statute. And we ended up, and it's kind of a long story short, we passed my amendment in the House to break that up. I mean, in fact, you go back and listen, I don't think there was a dissenting vote on it. Everybody was willing to go to the consensus grants for that money. Took it to the Senate, they were a little less than excited about it. And so we sat down, and that's when we were having 6 hours worth of budget negotiations between the two positions. We were 170 under, they were $1 million. And we're sitting in there talking about it. This was part of that. Well, Senate leadership was not excited about going with the consensus grants. They wanted to pull that money, put it back in the general fund, not put it in the BRC at that point. And so I took that back to the House after we got done talking, and they said, go back and talk to your people, see what you want to do. If they want something they really want to, hill they want to die on, or not. And so I had a whole House caucus, took all the Dems and all the Republicans, we sat in the Supreme Court room, and we went through everything we had just negotiated between the Senate and the House positions on the budget. Took it, showed everybody, explained it all, told them, said, this is what we got, what do you guys want to do with this? Well, the consensus view was, we kind of figured based on that conversation, consensus grants were not going to go anywhere, and they were going to fight them. And they said, so what our position was, the Senate had a position of 8%. The House's position was 7% on the direct distribution going forward. So we said, well then instead of not being able to get that for the local communities, let's move our position, adopt their 8% with the caveat that we're going to work on consensus grants through appropriations and do that, and they were game on that. So that's a big part of what appropriations is going to be working on, is coming in with those consensus dollars, and that's going to be part of that discussion with the Wyoming Business Council as well. So Jeremiah Reedman's working on it. Ashley Harpstreet's working on it. Jeremiah worked closely with him. He is your lobbyist for the County Commissioner Association. Ashley Harpstreet is for your WAM, or Wyoming Association of Municipalities. They're both all in on this, trying to help work on this. So they're all going to be working with the probes to see if we can figure out. John Bear he's all in, and everybody's supportive of it in that house. So we're going to see if we can put something together for the long-term use of the communities, to help small communities, especially hardship communities. The other part of this is it ultimately ended up being about $149 million in direct distribution, because when we moved to the 8% position, that added $19.2 million. And so when we talked to our house about that, with that help, they said, well, that'll help our small communities a little bit more. That's better than nothing. So let's do that, and then we'll still continue to work towards the consensus grants and working with the communities. And so another nice thing about the consensus grants, ladies and gentlemen, is that each community has a vote. Just because you've got more people in your community does not give you more power in the decision-making process of those grants and putting those plans together. So a small community still has the same sway in that discussion as a large community. And your county commissioners also weigh in on that as well. So what it requires is that communities, counties, work together and put together a plan. And then that plan moves ahead. If they can't get together and they can't work it out, you don't lose the money. The money stays in your account until you guys can get together on a plan, and then you can move forward with it. So that's the benefits of it. And Beth told me, she said it's about a 7-to-1 return. She said they noticed that when they would invest $1 of that, it would be a return of $7 in those communities, was her figures to me. So we're not going to give up on that. We're going to continue to work on that to help these communities be able to do infrastructure work and everything like that. Did that. Stormwater, yeah. That was a bill that didn't make it, but it's going to be back. There's some legal problems with it. There's some work that's being done about fees being charged for asphalted areas and communities, based on runoff and things like that. Got a pretty big, discussion with what was going on with the University of Wyoming and in Cheyenne about those issues, and so they believe that we've got something that will work. One piece of legislation died, so we're going to be back working on that next year and trying to address that. Another thing that is not so much involved with us here, but something that is very important in the state of Wyoming, is the Colorado River. That compact is up, and so we're having to renegotiate the agreement between the Colorado River. So we've got Select Water working on that. They're going to be involved with the state engineer's office, figuring out what and how that's going to look like for Wyoming ongoing, what impacts and effects that it's going to have on our water usage and our ability to get water and keep it in the hands of the appropriated lands that are here in Wyoming. Another major issue for the state of Wyoming, ladies and gentlemen, is orphaned water rights. And the fact that many times we're having people are subdividing land, former agricultural land, and those lands had water rights attached to them in many places. Well, those water rights then are not being utilized. And according to state law, if you don't use water rights for 5 years, then they can basically be applied for and taken from that land. Well, we've got potentially heard stories about out-of-state interests looking at these different locations that have these acreages of water, saying, you guys aren't using them. So we can apply for them because we're a downstream user. Wyoming is a headwater state. Everything in here flows out. So we've got downstream users looking very, very, with their little teeth hanging out, saying, maybe if you guys ain't going to do something with it, maybe we should. So what we're working on is actively making sure that we take care of those orphaned rights and start to reappropriate those rights and come up with means of getting those applied to other lands downstream and to continue to support agriculture. Then we've got some communities that are looking at these rights and being able to use those as non-potable water. One example is Dayton, Wyoming, has taken some rights that have been covered by homes and things like that, worked out, negotiated to be able to utilize those waters for their town. And then other landowners are trying to come up with abilities to be able to add extra acres to formerly, waters that were attached to certain acres that are not covered by homes. We're expanding that and using those water rights to go and water acres that were not previously watered downstream. So that's another major issue we're working on, and trying to make sure that we keep Wyoming water working in Wyoming. We're going to be looking at the Wyoming retirement system. This will be also a joint appropriations committee meeting, looking at the COLAs for people that have been employed in the state of Wyoming. They haven't had their COLAs for years, and so that is a major issue, and we want to make sure that we address those costs and those dollars that we really owe to those folks that had given their lives to the state of Wyoming, and we're wanting to go back through and make sure that we get those things hopefully taken care of and addressed. That's pretty much it on that, down through those notes. Okay, now, any questions? I don't know how long you guys want to hang out here, but I'll hang. But any questions? Any questions? I don't care what the question is. Please ask me a question. Unless you ask my wife's weight, and I will refuse to ask that.
Getting back to these guys.
Take him. Yeah. So we can hear him.
Had a better mouth.
Getting back to the data centers,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I'm in favor of these things. Just the fact that you're bringing Bill Gates back again, aren't you?
I don't know. Well,
This place is full of love. You can tell the people that like to be with old people because they really take care of you good and are very kind.
Twice a day, every day, activities people have an organized activity that's always interesting.
Everybody loves to play bingo. We play it 3 times a week here. We also have ceramics that you can paint. Really pleasant to live here. It's a good place to be.
I'm not sure I'm in favor of these things. Just the fact that you're bringing Bill Gates back again, aren't you?
I don't know. Well, if you go Bill Gates is
You said you were talking to Microsoft.
No, we were. It was what that was there was a however this works. What there was what is the name of that investment firm? They came down to the University of Wyoming, and they came and they were looking at an investment. It's what's the name of them? Walter, what is it? Think. We did that.
Think?
Yeah, we did
Me?
that. We did that. We went down, I listened to those guys talk about that. It was, God, it's huge. It's a major investment firm. They're wanting to invest into like Wyoming and infrastructure and energy development, things like that. No, it wasn't BlackRock. It was, J.P. Morgan.
Yeah, there we go.
J.P. Morgan came down to the University of Wyoming, and we met there, and I got that opportunity to sit in and listen to a lot of their discussion and stuff like that. But I didn't ever hear anything about Bill Gates involved in it, but there were just different opportunities that they were looking at that they could provide. You know, they have investors that are looking and wanting to invest in energy development. Believe it or not, you know, I mean, like we said, he said, you didn't want nothing to do with us before, now all of a sudden we're cool again, now everybody wants to come. He said, well, it's just the nature of investment. Well, they're wanting to find places to potentially invest in Wyoming in infrastructure and development of our resources as far as energy is concerned. And so that's who that was. I never did actually hear, now Microsoft is the head or has multiple of those data centers. Yes, they've got, I think, what, 12 that they're proposing. They've got several already, in function or being built. But yeah, Microsoft is a major data center provider for storing, using this information to store, to transmit, and to house. So yes, Microsoft is involved in that respect. The biggest thing that we're seeing in Wyoming and the effect in Wyoming is the energy that we produce. Now, Tallgrass is going to be in there providing energy, it sounds like, for that one data center, and it was like 1.5 gigawatts. It's a massive electrical, generation system, and that is just to feed that one center. And that's the big part of this, is the energy that they're asking for and the location. Now, the mayor of Cheyenne told me, he said that that one data center generates around $3.5 million to the community in property taxes and what they're actually generating. And he said, so what we're seeing is an actual lowering or a potential lowering of the cost to the rest of the people of Cheyenne, because they're taking such a dominant, basically they're charging them a tariff to be there, which is helping offset the costs in the community. So, but you're right, Dan. There's folks out there that are very apprehensive. Maybe apprehensive is being too generous. They don't like him at all. And I don't know how to go about, saying that this is something we shouldn't do, because here's the thing that goes through my mind. If we don't do this, and we don't provide this service, which is coming, I mean, if you've got phone pictures stored in the cloud, that's the cloud, is that data center. And that technology is moving ahead so quickly. And China, who I don't think always necessarily has our best interests at heart, is moving at a rocket speed to capture all of this ability to store this here data and all that. I think we as a nation would be very foolish to just say we don't want it. We have to manage it. It's something that is going to happen, and we need to be the ones, I think, that will be able to control it, because it's in our national interest, our security interest, to have that capacity. I don't like all the actors that are involved in it, Dan. There's no question about it. Bill Gates, no, I'm not a fan. Anybody that, believes in population, anyway, we won't go there, but no, I'm not a fan. But the reality of it is we have to do something with this technology or we'll be left behind. And we can't afford to be left behind. We have to be in the lead on this. And so I think we've got to do it well, and I think Wyoming, I know Wyoming can. And I think that we can really manage this well and be good for our state and ultimately good for our national security, because it's going to happen, and we just need to be on the front end of it instead of playing catch-up ball. I hate playing catch-up ball. And right now they want to come here, but to her point, the water issue. What do we do with the water? How does that impact us? A lot of folks are not impressed with the idea that they're keeping track of everything that you do. But if you have a cell phone, that horse has left the stable, because they know where you're sitting right now. So it's not an easy deal to navigate, but it's something that we need to look at as far as the state, because we have what they're looking for, and that's energy. And so I think we need to manage it. It's not like gambling, but it's, I think it can be a real positive. I know it can be a real positive for the state of Wyoming, but I think we have to manage it. We have to be wise about how we move ahead. So, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have just one thing to comment when it comes to not liking Bill Gates, and that is that the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. Who better to have his money invested in than Wyoming, Nebraska, South Dakota? Because that's probably what will happen if we don't take advantage of this investment.
I just said I'm not sure if that's.
Just saying.
Yeah, no, and there are states that are standing there at the ready to do something with this. They are. And so, any other questions? Mr. Fowler.
Last time Mr. Meier was here, we asked him to please take BlackRock out of the investment. you know, that the state does. I don't like feeding a company like that. And I think he's ignoring this, is what I'm saying. It may make a lot of money, but is it worth it?
I personally don't support that because here's the reason why. ESG, environmental, social, and governance. I mean, Wyoming was being persecuted because of what we do here, and we do well. They were denying financing. They were doing everything they possibly could to destroy our industries. And so I agree with you, Dan. Anybody that is actively, openly trying to destroy you, I don't want to put anything in their pockets. I don't, and I agree. I can't answer you directly on what percentage or what's going on as far as our state investments are concerned with those investment groups and things like that. But I do know there is an attitude in the legislature to move away from that and to try to do more investing in people that are actually supporting us instead of working actively against us. And that's some other parts of this that we voted for and supported. I supported that energy dominance bill. It was $105 million. I was a co-sponsor on that. That whole thing was designed around a 2-year run here. I went back to Washington, D.C. and sat down with a scandalous pile of state legislators, and we sat in meetings with like Doug Bergman and had conversations with them about what they're wanting to do moving forward as far as energy and our energy dominance in the world and everything. And they told me is that I don't want to go to groundbreakings. I want to go to ribbon cuttings. He said, I want you guys to have every tool in your toolbox that is going to help you move this ball as far down the field as you possibly can while we're in here. And he said, if you've got agencies that are fighting you, he said, give us their names, give us their numbers. He said, we'll fix it. He said, we want you to be successful, specifically Wyoming. And so that's why we invested that $105 million for infrastructure, because we've got regulation reform going on right now, and our DEQ is actually very good to work with. We've got a great DEQ, and they're very helpful in most of these situations of getting things moving. Now, there's some other things that, if you want to talk about getting rid of a gut pile, that's a different deal. I've got meat cutting outfits that are not impressed with some of the stuff that they're having to jump through in order to be able to get rid of the offal. But as far as energy is just concerned, we have a very small right now window, because I don't know who's going to be in there in 2 more years. So we need to take advantage of every opportunity we have. And some of the biggest things that we don't have is getting infrastructure like CO2, that thing that they're wanting to bury in the earth. We use that for enhanced oil recovery. We've got oil fields that up to 80% of the oil is still in the ground. And our current technology, the way we've been doing it, is not able to extract anymore. Billions of barrels of oil are underground in Wyoming right now in fields that are basically what we would call played out. But if you drive down through Midwest Wyoming and you look at the Salt Creek oil field there, that's all EOR. All the pump jacks are gone, and all there is a pipe up and back down in. That's CO2 going down there and reinvigorated that oil field. Those are the kind of things we want to invest in with that energy dominance money, to get lines out into these old oil fields and develop them and start to continue. It's way cheaper to develop an existing field than it is to drill new. But the other part of this that's so amazing is Scott Heiner. He's my majority floor leader. Sharp guy. I mean, he's just an amazingly intelligent guy when it comes to dealing with oil. He worked in the Permian. That was his major deal. He said, ladies and gentlemen, he said, the next biggest oil boom behind the Permian is Converse County, Wyoming. He said, that's where they're coming. He said, that Powder River Basin in there and all of that in there, that oil play is, he said, it's almost unfathomable what's in there. And that's all right in the middle of Wyoming. He said, you get ready. He told another representative, he said, they're coming to your home. He said, when them guys are done down there, which is coming up, he said, they pretty much mapped it all. They know where all of it's at. He said, they're coming to Douglas, Wyoming. And for any of you that have driven down through that country right now and look at what's happening, it looks like a city everywhere, from about right, even in and out right, clear to Wheatland almost, or south of Douglas. That whole area in there is just developing exponentially. And he said, it's coming in a way like you can't imagine. They found, 13 different plays. We've explored 2 of them. One of the largest producing oil wells in the world was just drilled 2 years ago up in the Powder River Basin. I mean, it's coming. So there's huge potential, upside potential for the state of Wyoming to be the key major player in this United States and ultimately the world. When I have conversations with people from Israel, they say, we watch what happens in Wyoming because what you're doing with your energy resources directly affects us. It helps us to know that we have energy security when we know that Wyoming specifically, she says, in Wyoming, she says, yes. She said, you guys are such a critical player in what happens on the world stage and what you develop. And so that's why I think it's critical that we take advantage of this administration, because we've seen administrations that are a little less than enthusiastic about what we do. You know, and so when you have a guy in the office that said we're going to have a war on coal, and he meant it.
Yeah.
You know, and nobody likes $100 a barrel oil. A lot of the oil right now that we're selling was contracted, so we're not getting $100 a barrel. It's a hopefully just a bubble, but we also have to realize that in our school foundation account, and I can get you the figures, within about 36 months or so like this, if we don't continue to generate revenue in that $70 to $80 a barrel range, we're going to be about $800 million short in the school foundation account. And I mean, we don't want that. We want to be able to have those dollars there to fund our requirements for education. So that's why when you hear the papers, the local, you know, all the different folks and the electronics all saying, oh, they're just cutting and slashing and hacking and looking, don't look back, we're just destroying the University of Wyoming, we're doing this. The reality of it is, and you want to hear the rest of the story, which isn't always easy to get out, is that we've got things that are coming down the road that we see that we need to start being very wise about how we're spending money right now so that we're ready to face, if that shows up, that we can handle it and continue to fulfill our responsibilities that we are required to by court and by our Article 7 of our Constitution. So, to me, the people that are just saying, it'll never happen, just ignore it. Just go on. It never comes to fruition. I personally don't operate my ranch that way. You know, and I don't think we should operate the state that way. So if you know there's things coming and there's factors that need to be taken into consideration, the prudent person, the prudent legislator does that for the benefit of the state, so that we're not hung out to dry without good reason. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Speaking of Mr. Meier, did he ever start investing in gold or silver?
We invested a little bit in gold. It's worth a lot of money now.
Yeah.
We should have bought more.
Yeah.
And we fought them on the floor, Dan. We fought our little butts off trying to get them to buy more gold, and they wouldn't do it. But what we did buy was a great investment. Yeah, I don't know right now if he's investing in more gold. I've heard gold's going to go to 20,000. I don't know where it's at right now, 4,800, 4,900,
almost
something like
5.
that. Almost 5. You know, I remember my friend Jim Bob Bush, he was buying gold when the Hunt brothers were trying to capture the market at $5 an ounce. And we all thought he was nuts, you know. I think it's what, 160 or 40 or something now. So now he's wealthy, and hopefully you'll remember the little people that didn't do what he did. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where he's at on gold right now, what he's doing, but I can get you a phone number that you can call and talk to some people that'll fill you in exactly on where that's at and what is or isn't being invested. So, any other questions? Anything, I'm telling you, if you want to know about the Freedom Caucus, you want to know how and why, you want to know about the check gate, bunch of BS, I'll answer any of that. There's a lot of crap flying around out there. I will answer whatever you want to know. I got nothing to hide. I'm not scared of you. I'm scared of the Lord I serve, and I'm going to have to explain it to him. So it's going to be straight. Don't worry about it.
You know the price of tea in China?
Doesn't matter. So I've been told. So, well, that anyway, I hope this was informative. I hope you got something out of this tonight. I really do appreciate that you guys take the time out of your busy schedules to come and listen to me drone on for hours. It's always a pleasure, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to serve these good, sweet folks. And so with that, we'll say thank you, Mr. Rose, for putting this together.
I would say thank you, Curt.
coming out. Just a couple of
Good cat.
Well, that was a good save.
Just a couple of things. Next week on Tuesday, the 14th, Sherry Steinmetz will be here to do a legislative town hall from the Senate side. So please feel free to come out. I just put it together today with Stanley's help, and so we'll get an announcement out.
What time?
6 o'clock. He hasn't called.
It's in the Michael's room too.
Okay, it's in the Michael's room, Tuesday, the 14th at 6 o'clock. And to kick off campaign season, we have Zeta Knuckles Anderson, who is here. She is running for representative for Chip Spot. So if you'd like to speak with her, she's here today. And then we have 2 representatives from Brent Bean's campaign as well. So if you would like to speak with them, they are right here. So, all right. Thank you all for coming and have a great night.